I understand you do not wish to have your identity revealed, so we've agreed to an anonymous interview. What can you tell us about the taxi cab industry in Sydney?
It was a race to the bottom. If you charge less than your rivals who use the meters, then you get more calls.
And what else can you tell us?
I can tell you everything. What's with the light?
Hit the lights! Hit the lights! Hi folks, I'm Joe Ward of Boxer Short Media, and that was a little bit of substandard satire to kick things off. Let's face it, there's not a lot of humor when it comes to municipal topics of discussion in the Cape Breton regional municipality. But I think there's room for us to talk about issues the way real people talk and the way real people joke here in the CBRM. If not, our eyes are sure to glaze over with boredom. So maybe now you'll stick around to hear my latest update on what's up with the taxi cab pricing changes here in Sydney. For those who saw the last video, you'll know that I'm not against taxi cab drivers being paid fairly for their much needed services, but I was concerned that some people are paying a little more than expected when the meters were turned on. The problem is that the bylaw requires meters in Sydney to almost always be on for regular fares. I wanted to know why. So I communicated with one company by email, and the representative basically said the CBRM just recently told them that the usage of meters would be enforced, or they'll incur the fines that the bylaw includes for not doing so. The company suggested the only change was the enforcement, and that's their documented words, not mine. Obviously the question was, well, why wasn't the CBRM enforcing the bylaw all along? Were they or weren't they? I sent an email off to the mayor, all councillors, the CBRM planning department, and several members of the media. Media reps and councillors Steve Parsons and Lauren Green were courteous enough to reply. My councillor Glenn Pruce unfortunately hasn't responded to the email I sent him over a week ago, so I'm not holding my breath on that one. Let's keep this topic as brief as possible today. After the last video, many comments on YouTube and Facebook came in, and those folks provided some insights into what might have happened in Sydney. Essentially, it's what I'm calling a race to the bottom on pricing. So some commenters tell me that it was just a matter of competition between rival cab companies. What they believe is that company A might decide to charge a flat rate that is less than what the metered rate would be, so that they become the cheapest cab option and get future business. The lowest price is obviously a very important factor for low or fixed income frequent passengers. So if ignoring the meters goes unchecked by the CBRM, and it certainly seems like there wasn't any clear sign of intervention up until recently, at least from an outsider perspective, then eventually other companies may turn their meters off in order to stay competitive. Here's the thing, no customers are going to complain if they get a cheaper rate, but the customer is not the only one we need to consider. Taxi drivers have to earn an income too. If they're not permitted to run their meters as the bylaw requires, then they may lose earnings. And they have a lot of expenses, so just imagine paying their weekly gas bill alone even before considering insurance and maintenance. We have to pay them for a ride, but we're not technically covering the costs on the way to picking us up, nor for the idle time when they sit around waiting for our call. So it's a catch-22. If they're forced to undercharge, they lose money. If the rate goes too high, some people may reduce their cab usage and they lose money. All that supply and demand and pricing elasticity stuff you may or may not have learned in economics at one point or another comes into play. The CBRM says they're working on the bylaw, and they should be. No rate changes have been made in 14 years. Compare that with the price of anything, minimum wage or even a Big Mac over that period to see how taxi drivers were left behind. I've started to think that the best regulation for the CBRM may simply be the maximum metered rate that can be charged, and require all drivers to run the meter all the time. However, giving the drivers the opportunity to extend discounts to seniors or regular customers who help keep a reliable flow of income for them, or who may need a little break. If you think about it, is there any way to prevent drivers from doing that anyway? Even though the meters are on now, some drivers are rounding down the fare rather than making change. Think about it. Drivers are not turning over in their passenger call log with a full report of what was charged each customer. And even if they did, there's nobody at the CBRM that's going to audit them. The meter is the only universal pricing mechanism to keep things fair. And a customer should get to see the charges on it every time in every zone. And when they get a discount, they realize how significant it is compared with the number on the meter. But if we're worried about the drivers too, they could never be told they aren't allowed to run those meters by anyone, and they should be given the flexibility to extend their own discounts if that's what's needed to sustain their business. And the pricing structure doesn't have to be so flatline. If consensus said they should discount seniors and charge the nighttime pub crawlers a premium, then so be it. Do that. Clearly, dropping a grandmother off at Sobeys is a much more relaxed call than cleaning up vomit on the back seat of the car or driving a passenger around at 4 a.m. knocking on doors trying to wake up his favorite Coke dealer. Drivers deserve a premium for putting up with any of that. Here's the big takeaway. If the CBRM wants a bylaw to place certain rules on taxis or anything else they regulate, it's their responsibility to make sure that it's enforced. And when they decide enforcement isn't necessary, then either tear up the bylaw or fix whatever part of it no longer fits with what everyone wants to happen, and do that more frequently than once in a decade. The mayor and every councillor in the CBRM now has this information from me. Who wants to take the Vegas odds that during the public hearing or the final vote to enact the blanket 30% increase, that not one of them will even mention it?
Please hang up and try again.